Welcome back to the Celtics Nation Rise podcast, episode 91. I'm your host, Griffin Aldrich. Alongside me, we got my co-host, David Caires, and we have a very special guest. You guys know him, Ian. Welcome to the podcast. We had you on for the breaking news with Anthony Simons earlier on the season, and you're no stranger to this podcast. I feel like, Jesus, it's like David and I were talking about like the fifth or sixth time you've been on the podcast. So we always love having you here, Ian. It's a special treat for sure. But you guys know the drill. Really quick, talk about the Celtics as of recently, the last week or so. What have you thought about the Celtics? We'll start off with you, Ian, and go to David and back to myself. What has been your impression on the Celtics as of recently?
I mean, obviously, it's hard not to talk about the fact that Jayson Tatum is now playing basketball, and he has looked, for probably as close to Jayson Tatum as you probably could be coming off of a torn Achilles. Like, I've honestly been incredibly impressed with the way that he has been able to play over these 3 games that he has played in. I was there for his debut against the Mavericks, and I think he and everyone else on the team really fed off the energy of the crowd for the TD Garden because the energy there was unbelievable. And then the game against Cleveland, I mean, the shooting splits aren't going to look great right now just because that's going to be par for the course. He's coming back. He's working into, the Celtic system, which he's been familiar to, but it's not necessarily the exact same that it was when he went down. So it's going to be obviously it's going to take time before he is, the Jayson Tatum that everybody knows. But honestly, with the way that he's been playing, it might not be as long as we might think. We might see, a different version of, or a close to the old version of Jayson Tatum by maybe the playoffs this year. You never know. He's a player that can rise to the challenge. I mean, you saw last night's game when Jaylen Brown ended up having to get ejected. He stepped up a little. He stepped up. He had a couple really good spurts in that game where he was starting to take over the game. So honestly, I think the fact that Jayson Tatum being back is probably the biggest thing that I've been taking away from. And he looks just as good, and the Celtics have looked really good around him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to echo. I know we have a segment later talking about Tatum, but I mean, just honestly, right now, the Celtics are making me smile a lot. I mean, they've been making me smile all season, but just having your franchise player come back and to echo what Ian said, him look way better than I thought he would right off the bat is incredible. Obviously, tough one last night, and the team kind of let their emotions get the best of them. But I thought we put up a very good performance against Dallas on this past Friday in Tatum's first game back, and then we were able to fend off the Cavs, who are always usually giving us a tough matchup on Sunday. So, a lot of good things there. Always look to see how many points we're giving up, and I mean, we held the Mavericks to the century mark, and then Cleveland to just under the century mark at 98 in those 2 victories. And, I believe we are now, I don't know if the stat is different now, but when I woke up yesterday, I saw we are allowing the fewest points per game of any team in the NBA. So obviously love to see that. Yeah, we just have a tough game tomorrow night. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, there's no such thing as a moral victory, but I thought it was encouraging even after Jaylen Brown getting ejected. We went toe-to-toe with the San Antonio Spurs, obviously a team that many people out there think could win the championship this year. So, yeah, I have no complaints with how the Celtics are playing. And we're almost at that time with a month left in the season to start getting excited for playoffs. So I got 1.5 eyes on these last 20-ish games, and then a half an eye looking towards end of April, May, and hopefully June.
Yeah, I have to say from my perspective of the Celtics as of recently, I agree with you, David. They've been making me smile a lot recently too. Last night would have loved to get that game in, especially because I feel like that would have been Ron Harper Jr.'s first CNR MVP. But unfortunately didn't get that win last night. That was a rough one, but overall, I think the Celtics have been playing phenomenal. And Ian, you went to it too. The Jayson Tatum coming back, it was just such a surprise. And it's still so weird seeing him on the court because like the thing about it was such a surprise until he came. Like we didn't know, like, you had hints in like, the G League where he was assigned to the main Celtics. It was like, all right, he could be back in the next couple of weeks right after All-Star break. But you never really got a day that he was going to return or anything. So it's so shocking still that he's back. But Ian, I wanted to ask you really quick, obviously you have media credentials with the Celtics now. And if you wanted to discuss that really, how has that experience been for you? And there's a lot of cool interviews that we'll get into in a few minutes, but what do you want to talk about, about your credentials and how you've had that experience and even, what you've seen from just being in the media world now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's honestly one of the coolest experiences that I've been able to do. I completely want to thank Celtics Blog for even being able to give me the opportunity. I was hired last year to start writing for them, and through them, I was able to start getting the media access to games this season. And it's honestly just a really cool experience. Every person that you see covering the Celtics, all of them are just awesome and super nice people. Um, like the fact that you're able to just go to the games, get behind the scene access, and just be in like the press room area is just a really cool experience. And honestly, it's something that I never thought I would be able to make it to that point. But again, I need to thank the Celtics Blog the most for giving me the opportunity. And yeah, it's definitely something I love and hopefully something I can continue doing moving forward into the playoffs.
So, on the topic of media, still, I had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of your colleagues last year during the season, like Bobby Kravitsky, Daniel Donabedian. I'm blanking on a couple of the other names. I'm sorry to those people out there if they're watching this, but I always like to ask the question, athletes always talk about what their welcome to the league moment was. Like Tatum always says, game one of his career going up against LeBron. Do you have some sort of welcome to the media moment already, or anything like that sticks out to you?
I don't know. I mean, I've done maybe like 6 games so far covering the team, and definitely probably the first it was probably the first time I did the whole thing, and like seeing the entire process of it's like a well-oiled machine. Like you see people that cover the team every single day for a living, and it's like everybody has their own routine. So it's like, you get there, you watch warm-ups, you go to the pregame thing, you do the coaches press conferences, then you can do you can split off, you can watch more warm-ups, you can get dinner. Like there was just so much. It felt like the first time I went that wow, this is just like an entirely different world that I had no idea about. And now that I was able to experience it, it basically made me think oh, this is what it's like to really cover this team and be able to cover the Celtics on probably the closest level that you're ever going to be able to get. And it was something that I honestly could not believe doing it for the first time.
And I gotta say, Ian, I'm an intern for the Portland Sea Dogs, and I got a lot of opportunities to go up in the press box. And geez, even in the minor leagues, they treat you like royalty. You go up there, they have dinner set up there for you and everything. I mean, it's incredible. So I mean, doing that from the Celtics, I bet you love that too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's an incredible what they have. Every night they have a full course meal of anything they put together their own menu, and all their food is just insane. It's honestly just such an insane experience, and everything they do there is just really cool. And they do probably, and obviously I don't have much experience going to cover media in any other arena, but I can only and from what I've heard, it really does feel like the TD Garden probably has the top tier when it comes to like catering for media and stuff like that.
That's incredible. And
do you have like a sorry, Griffin?
No, go ahead, David.
Do you have like a strategy for like what questions you want, like when you're preparing a question pre or post game? Like, are you trying to ask questions that aren't yes or no questions? Are you just going off like things you've read about maybe? What's your strategy when asking a question, and does it change if you're talking to Joe Mazzulla versus one of the players?
Yeah, so for me, mostly if I have something in mind that like I know I want to talk about like in its own specific article, I definitely like have the question readily available, and I feel like I try to ask it to where like if I'm not able to ask Joe Mazzulla, it would still be able to like be a good enough question. Like I was able to ask a question to Jaylen Brown earlier this season about the Celtics offense's ability to, use long extended scoring runs and like to kind of like, run away and hide kind of a little bit and like kind of build a giant lead for the Celtics. And, that was a really cool thing that I was able to ask Jaylen Brown to get his perspective on as like a player actually in the moment. And like I've kind of tried to word it the best I could to where it could work for like a coach and it could work for the player type thing. The only other questions I was really the only other times like if I did have a question, it would be related to like how the player played in the game. Mostly when I'm writing for Celtics blog, I write like takeaways from the game. So like if say, Sam Hauser had a really big night, like, I asked him one time about like getting into the zone and stuff like that, like just stuff that can relate back to like the stuff, the article that I'm writing about is kind of what I try to do when I think of questions that could potentially I could potentially ask.
And let's watch those two really quick. Let's pull up the Sam Hauser one first. Courtesy of Ian. Let's hear your question for Hauser.
Sometimes you hit your first two and then you miss your next 10. Sometimes you hit your first two and then you end up hitting 10 threes on the night. So you just try to shoot every shot like you're gonna make it, and just try to be process oriented and not result based. And just know like if you're taking the right shots and you're shooting with confidence, regardless if it goes in or not, that like you should be happy with that. And that's what I try to do throughout the game. Sometimes I'm not great at it, and it gets me if I'm missing. But tonight they were going in. Final question, Sam.
And that wasn't the first time you talked to Sam Hauser, right? Because
yeah, yeah. Back in 2022, he was doing like autograph signing at the South Shore Mall, and I was able to ask like the person that was running the signing if I would have been able to like make a video with Sam Hauser and like ask him a couple questions and stuff like that for a video, and I just had to get it through like his media team, and I was perfectly good to ask him questions. But it was honestly kind of a really cool full circle thing, at least for me in my mind, because that was the first time I ever asked a player a question before in the press conference after, and I think it was after like a couple games. I tried my best to like, watch how other people were doing it. So like I could try to ask a question. And my question was basically like asking him like how he feels of getting into like a shooting zone throughout the game. Cause I think he hit like 5 threes in that game or something like that. Just like, how it feels when he's like in that kind of mode.
Without a doubt. And I want to play the JB one too, because you were talking about JB in there. So let's pull this clip up really quick too for you guys.
You guys have done a great job on offense when it comes to going on like long scoring runs. What part of the offense has allowed you guys to be able to go on these long extended runs and be able to kind of put the game away at points?
I'm just making the right play, moving the basketball. I thought we had some good ball movement, and trying to play with some pace. But I just think that our offense just has a good flow to it right now, where it's going from side to side. It's not sticking too much, and then when we need to take advantage of a matchup, we will. But it's not like we're looking for that every time down. So just continuing to have some good rhythm and flow to our offense. A lot of our guys are playing well right now, so from my standpoint, no need to force anything. Just continue to just create an advantage and just play from there and trust the game after that.
Final question over here.
And how surreal was that one with the Jaylen Brown? Because again, I feel like, probably with Sam Hauser, you talked to him before, but JB, and where he has been this season, how cool was it to kind of ask that to maybe even the MVP this season?
No, that was a really cool experience. like other people, it doesn't. It was really surreal being able to actually do it because, Jaylen Brown is like, he's a top 10 player in the NBA right now, and being able to ask him a question to eventually like have an article, write an article about it was just something that like I never thought would have even been possible if you asked me like 5 years ago, if I would be in that position. Like, so it was just honestly an insanely cool experience. And, like I said before, I honestly can't thank Celtics blog enough for giving me the opportunity to be able to get media access and like, see this world that like I wasn't really, I like kind of knew in like, just like from afar, but like actually being able to interact with it in real life is just, it's really special and something that like I'll definitely never like take for granted for sure.
And then we'll go with the last one. We'll go with the Joe Mazzulla one really quick. And then I want to hear your opinion on this one too.
I was wondering because you had a new starting lineup today. You were starting Garza and Keita in the past. Are you going to go back to more double big lineups as time goes on with Vucevic?
The only thing we know is that we don't know anything. And it's just anything can happen. And so we just have to be ready to adjust either to our opponents or to what gives us the best chance to win. And I'm grateful to the ownership and the front office and the locker room to where we have versatility and we have the ability to play a bunch of different ways. And whatever gives us the best chance to win that night, our guys trust that, and we just got to be ready to win.
I have to say, you have to be excited too. You asked such a great question. I have to credit you for that one. And I have to say, you must be happy that it wasn't like a question where he like gave you the silent treatment or anything like that, because you see the funny ones where you kind of like, in a sense, hoping maybe you got a little comedic Joe response, or were you happy with that one?
I was honestly really happy with the answer that he did give me. It was I think that was during the last game before the All-Star break against Chicago, and like it was just something that was like on my mind for a while because I was wondering how they were going to have the rotations with Vucevic, and Luka Garza was playing really well up until that point, and obviously Keita was the starter, so it was just something that like really interested me, and I really wanted to get like his perspective on the whole thing. And like I kind of have learned like over time, like asking straightforward questions like that isn't going to give like the best answer every single time. So like that was definitely something that like I needed to learn if I was to, if I did have another question in the future again for Joe Mazzulla. But the fact that he was able to give me like a really good answer and thought on answer really did help me when it came to like writing. So I definitely appreciate him for giving me like a really good answer for that.
No, without a doubt. And I have one final question, and then I'll toss it over to David. But my last question for you, Ian, about like the whole media aspect is, you were at the games as a fan a couple of weeks ago, now going in there for a media position. How different would you say of an aspect is it, obviously being there as a fan, still supporting the team, but with the professionalism as well? What would you say that kind of is now?
Yeah, it's definitely completely different than anything else because during the media, like the whole, like there's like an entire system of operations of like how everything goes and stuff like that. And, being able to get there, watching the warm-ups, being able to go into the press conferences, being around all of these guys who cover the team, that have covered the team for a long time and cover the team for a living and stuff like that is like, it's so much different, and it is more of a professional kind of atmosphere that like you definitely don't get when you're a fan, because when you're a fan, you can go there, you can, have a couple of drinks, you can hang out there and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's definitely like a more professional environment, but it's also something I really enjoy doing because you get to see it from a different perspective. And, you get to watch the games knowing that like, you're also, you have a responsibility to cover the team. And it's kind of like it kind of makes it feel a little more important than just like being there as a fan kind of thing.
So to switch gears, I guess a little bit more to talking about the Celtics on the court. Obviously, the Celtics sitting right now with the fourth best record in the NBA and second place in the Eastern Conference. What do you think is the Celtics ceiling this season?
I think they can win the championship, if I'm being honest. I think that's probably the ceiling. I feel like if you're a legit contender in the NBA right now. I feel like that should be the ceiling for any team. So if you're the Thunder, if you're the Nuggets, if you're the Spurs, you can even maybe say the Knicks or the Cavs or the Pistons. Like, these are the legit NBA contenders this year. And I feel like if you're going to have a ceiling, it should be winning the championship. I think the Celtics believe that. I think if you ask Joe Mazzulla or like any of the players what their expectation is for the season, that they want to win a championship. And I don't see how I can see like there's a pathway in my mind that says, this Celtics team could make the NBA finals. I feel like the lowest ceiling is probably just making the finals or making the Eastern Conference finals. Like, I think that they have a chance. This Eastern Conference isn't going to be easy by any means. And this team is, it's not as like dominant as it was in 2024, but they're still a great team. They've done a great job. Finding guys to play roles, to play bigger roles that, they might not have expected to be playing, but everyone stepped up. Jayson Tatum's coming back. Like, I don't see a world where like the ceiling shouldn't be winning the NBA championship.
Do you care at all about the fact that we didn't meet the criteria for the 40-20 rule this year, or are you not paying that any attention?
A little bit of both. What was that?
Or is it like a little bit of both, where it's like it's not the end of the world that we didn't hit it, but obviously the stats prove I think 95% of the champions have hit it since like the 80s. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things where it's like, I didn't even really care about it too much until like they were kind of at the point where it was close enough to where like, okay, there was maybe like, because like there was a time I think they had to win like their last 5 games in a row to actually like make it happen in the first place. So it was like this Boston Celtics team is in such a weird situation where it's like you basically almost went 40-20 without your best player like playing. Like, it's like such a weird situation. And if you look at those teams that didn't get the 40-20 rule and still won, they also had like similar weird situations in that kind of way. Obviously not like with their best player missing, but like there was just like other random things that happened as to why that 40-20 thing didn't really matter in their minds. So I always go back to a quote from The Simpsons where it's like, you can say, you can use numbers to prove anything. And 40% of people know that. Like, you can use statistics to prove anything kind of thing. So, like, obviously the 40-20 rule is very important. It's been kind of like a benchmark for legitimate NBA championship contenders for years. But at the same time, they also they haven't experienced what the Celtics have experienced this season. So it's one of those things where it's like you can give or take. And, the best thing to do is just actually wait and see what happens.
No, well said. Well said. David, what would you say the Celtics ceiling is for you this season? Because I think that's a good question to even go around.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ian said, winning the championship. I will admit, I did not think that would be my answer the whole season. I've been pretty open on this program saying that I think we can make it to the championship, make it out of the East, because the East is just so unpredictable. I mean, obviously Detroit beat us in 3 of the 4 matchups this year, but I really liked how we played them in every single one. And then, obviously we have the history of New York last year. We've had they've had our number a little bit more than we've had their number this year, but I don't know. I thought there's no chance we can beat any of these teams out in the West. So I would just consider it a victory if we made it to the NBA finals, but I don't want to jump the gun too much, and obviously we're going to keep, he's the man of the hour and he's going to have his own segment dedicated to him later. But Jayson Tatum, again, has just looked way better right off the bat than I could have even imagined. That he is even a bigger factor than I thought in the Celtics being able to get over the hump, because he's only going to get better, in my opinion, the more accustomed he gets to being back playing basketball. I mean, he still has like 20 more games to get acclimated before we even start the playoff run. And I'm in awe with how he's played lately. And if we're adding 15 more 20 points, 15 or 20 more points to the lineup, I mean, I don't see a world where we can't win the championship. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I think we're absolutely in the mix now. I mean, our one of the best NBA trade deadline acquisitions came late this year.
Oh, I think we might have lost David. Ian, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
We might have lost David, but I agree without a doubt on the whole Jayson Tatum. Oh, David, we got you back. All right.
What was the last thing you heard?
We were talking about the trade deadline acquisition.
Yeah, I think Jayson Tatum, there's a case to be made that the trade deadline came late in a way for the Celtics, and he was the best NBA trade deadline acquisition by anyone. So I don't know. I mean, or I do know. I've been very impressed with how he's been in these first 3 games back, and that makes things a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I have to say, for me, really quick, I think the Celtics ceiling, I think you and Ian both really hit it on the head. Championship. I mean, I think making it to the finals would even be something. But I think this Celtics team is more than capable of doing it this year, because you look at the team as a whole, and you kind of look at it and you kind of look at it and the pieces are there. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown have won a championship already. And you look at it and it's like, now they're in their peak, like their prime right now. You look at that, and I think it's totally possible. But you guys kept talking about the names, and I'm sorry, I pulled up the wrong graphic because I had episode 90 when we're on episode 91 here. But you guys were talking about it. Jayson Tatum update. Ian, we'll start off with you and then we'll go to David. But you were, out of all of us, you were actually there, and I'm so jealous of you because you also got to see Cooper Flagg play. Geez, I always make jokes because he lived 45 minutes from me in Maine. But anyways, I'll stop the Cooper Flagg talk. I'm stopping it there. But you got to see Jayson Tatum perform, and I think there's a couple negatives, and not much. I think the only negative about it is just shooting wise, and that'll come with time. But there's a lot of positives too. I see from a night to night basis of Jayson Tatum looking like Jayson Tatum. But what would you highlight some positives and negatives that you've seen in Jayson Tatum since he's came back, and what do you kind of want to highlight? When do you think he'll be back to kind of where he left off? What are your whole takes on that, though, Ian? And we'll start off with you and go to David and myself.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about it in the beginning of the show, but when it comes to Jayson Tatum, the only thing that you can even really consider a negative is like what you said with his shooting. But at the same time, it's hard to really showcase that as a negative for somebody that is 300 something days off of a torn Achilles. It's really hard to criticize that. I mean, it's not hard for other people to criticize it, but for someone who watches and covers the team like we do, it's something where it's just amazing that he's even out there in the first place. So obviously, like you said, the shooting is going to come with time, but there are times, and this kind of goes into the positives, where he has been able to take over a game in very short spurts of time. If you watched the Celtics game against the Spurs, if you saw the beginning of the fourth quarter, when he scored 7 straight points, he was able to do a couple moves to get to the first one, he got to the basket, and finished over Wembanyama. He basically blew by Wembanyama and finished over him. And then he had a mid-range jumper, and then he hit a 3 that forced the Spurs to call a timeout when the Celtics were only down by 3. I don't know if that was when NBC was cutting to Bam scoring 83 or not, but I remember watching it and I was thinking yes, this is the Jayson Tatum that we all remember. When he is on, he's going to score a bunch of points in a hurry, and the only reason why he didn't keep going was just because he was on a minutes restriction. That's the thing. It's coming in these short bursts. I think the long minutes restriction, the in-between time, is probably messing him up a little bit, just because he's used to playing damn near 48 minutes a game at times like that. So obviously he's getting back into it. The minutes restriction is definitely something that we're not used to seeing from him. He's not used to really doing. So as time goes on, I think his shot's going to go back to normal, and we're going to continue to see Jayson Tatum putting up these points. I mean, he's averaging almost 20 points a game through 3 games coming off of a torn Achilles. Like, that is a ridiculous thing to even think about, just watching him play. And like you said, you can look at the shooting numbers all you want, but I really don't think that's a good indicator of, how well he's been able to play. I think it's these short bursts where he turns into, Jayson Tatum again. That is the most encouraging thing in my mind.
For me, I mean, the biggest positive above all positives is the fact that he's currently averaging 6.7 rebounds per game. So that stands above all for me personally. But I'm going to focus completely on positives. I think in a short period of time, I've become even more impressed with how Tatum, at first, understandably so, in that Dallas game, it looked like he was a little bit nervous to drive to the rack. Completely understand that, given he's coming off a ruptured Achilles injury, and obviously there's got to be some sort of mental block associated with that. But I thought as the games went on against Dallas a little bit, and more so against Cleveland and San Antonio, I just loved how he's keeping that as part of his game, like not being afraid every once in a while to drive to the rack and try and draw contact and score points down low. Other than that, chemistry has been great with all teammates. Most specifically for me, what I've noticed has been great is in that chemistry with Tatum, along with his chemistry with White and Hauser, getting them involved, dishing the ball out to them for good looks. I think Ian summed it up perfectly with the sentence, what you said, where he looks as close to the old Jayson Tatum as we know. I think, Griffin, you said that as well. So I have no complaints. Pleasantly surprised with how Tatum has looked. Crazy to see him 10 months post-injury just casually coming out and playing 28 minutes a night. And I mean, obviously, it's only going to get ramped up even more. But I have nothing but good things to say about how Tatum's been playing. The jump shot people have been talking about online looks a lot more crisp as well. I think it was a little bit more awkward beforehand, but now it looks a little bit more concise and swifter. And then the other thing, too, is it's not even related to the Achilles, and I don't know if this means anything, but this is the first time in a while I've seen Jayson Tatum playing without tape on his wrist. So This could be the healthiest version of Tatum that we've had in a while. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just very, very happy with what I've seen from JP so far in just 3 games.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I have to say my positives I've seen from Jayson Tatum is, and you kind of alluded to it more, David, with him going in the paint. I'm happy that he's still doing that. And, obviously tried to throw down 2 dunks, stuffed himself on one of them. But still even doing that against Dallas, I think that was pretty impressive. And I just look at Jayson Tatum, and it's like we're 3 games in, and they're still like, a little around a month till playoffs, something like that. By playoff time, we might be having Tatum scoring 30, back to 30 a night. Obviously too close to say, but we're gonna continue to see steps in Jayson Tatum. And again, I think that first night he was nervous, and again, you guys mentioned as well the minutes restriction. He's used to playing a lot more, but I feel like, he's letting the team play around him as well. You kind of look at Jayson Tatum and you look at where he is, one roadblock for him was, he looked at the team and he was like, he didn't want to disrupt anything before he came back. And now you look at Jayson Tatum and he's like starting to give in more. Like in that fourth quarter, as you guys mentioned, he went in and had 7 points. He's been, playing a little bit more, and, he needs to get up shots. That's the thing. I don't have an issue with the shots because they're going to have to start falling, and you might as well put them up. That's practice makes it better. But do you guys have anything else you want to mention on Jayson Tatum? Ian, do you want anything else that you even saw at the Garden or anything?
I would say that his passing skills are still probably as good as they probably ever have been. That first game, when the first thing that he did was try to find Keita on a lob, And then he found Jaylen Brown for an assist. And then he found Sam Hauser on a play that he was driving towards the rim and kicked it out. And the defense was still guarding him like a double team. Like there was nothing different with Jayson Tatum at all. Like those are the things that, like, when you were watching Celtics games, that is what made the Celtics so good over the course of that championship run, was the fact that teams were so scared of Jayson Tatum that they were forced to having to leave guys like Drew Holiday, like Derek White, like Kristaps Porzingis, like Sam Hauser, like Peyton Pritchard, like all of these guys wide open because they know how good Jayson Tatum is. And that hasn't really gone away, no matter, the injury or not. So expect to see more of that as time goes on. And when Jayson Tatum is hitting those shots, you're going to see the Celtics win by 30 at this point. Like, because if he's hitting shots, if Jaylen Brown's going to keep playing the way that he's been playing, like at the MVP type level that he's had this season, like, it's one of those things where it's like you're going to see the Celtics blow out some teams and you're going to see some really big games from Boston. So I think it's just one of those things where it's like, it's cool to see that like everything else has like not really taken that big a dip. I think he's been, there's times where he looks a little indecisive and passive at times, but overall he still looks like Jayson Tatum. And I think that's the most encouraging thing.
No doubt. What do you got for us though, David?
No, I guess the only other thing I'll say is that I'm interested to see how long this minutes restriction is for and what the next benchmark is for Tatum. Like, does he go up to 32, 34 minutes? I mean, obviously he's used to playing 36 minutes in the regular season, and then playoffs is 40 plus at least. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that progresses the rest of the way, these last 20 regular season games and then the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the minutes restriction, that was one thing where at first you weren't unsure about. Like, at first, I believe they said no minutes restriction, and that's what we were under the impression. We were like, oh, no minutes restriction, but it's around 27 minutes. You've seen it the past few games. That's kind of where the mark is for Jayson Tatum. But yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see that. But our next kind of topic, we talked about it after Tatum's return as well, is, also our trade deadline acquisition with Vucevic. He is out until playoffs. And, we mentioned this, it sucks because, you finally get Tatum back and then your trade deadline piece is gone. And then now they really don't have time to play together till playoffs. And that just sucks on one part. But what are your guys' initial thoughts of this injury too? And then we'll get into kind of the Amari Williams aspect of it, because I have something to say, as you guys can see down below too. But what were your overall thoughts on this happening, with Vucevic? And do you think this is a big hit to our team? What do you guys think? We'll start off with you, Ian, and go to David.
I think it just kind of puts you in a similar position to where you were pre-trade deadline, where there is a little bit of question marks at the big man position. Like, if Neemias Queta goes down for a game now, are you really feeling confident in rolling out a lineup of Luka Garza and Amari Williams as your big men? That's no shade to Garza or Williams. They have been good in short spurts this season, but they've also had times where they've looked like they've struggled. So it's one of those things where, like, you're kind of in one of those positions now where it's like, you're a little bit thin at the center position. And honestly, I feel like Vucevic will be fine. He's a veteran in this league. He has played with a bunch of different teams. He's been in a ton of different situations. So I feel like at worst, it's not going to take him too much time to really try to integrate back into the team, since he was already trying to integrate in the first place. So he was looking pretty good with Jaylen Brown and the chemistry that they were building together. Him and Derek White were building some pretty good chemistry. So I kind of have, it would be weird for that to just like be non-existent after missing, like a month or so. So it will definitely be interesting to see what the Celtics big man rotation is going to look like moving forward. You're going to see a lot more Luka Garza minutes. And there were times where like he had some really great moments. And then there were times like the game against the Spurs last night where maybe Victor Wembanyama kind of just torched him a little bit. And that's just going to happen because, outside of it just being Victor Wembanyama, but like, it's just going to happen sometimes. Like, these guys are not, for as good as Queta and Garza have been this season, this is their first time in like these big roles as a whole. So it's just going to be one of those things where it's like you're kind of just in the same position you were before the trade deadline. You're just going to have to see what you have rolling out with the center position. And if Garza can continue to play well off the bench, I feel like you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, so the Vucevic injury, it's like felt like it just happened in a flash watching that game at home and on Friday. Where I mean, maybe it's a mixture of me just like dozing off because I was tired after work while having the game on in the background. But I just remember the next time I looked up, you can see in the bottom ticker Vucevic is out. He fractured his finger, and then they know that right away. And then the very next thing is the next morning it's saying he's out for like a month. And it's, I feel for Vooch, obviously, just with them trying to ingratiate himself or integrate himself into this new team. He has a 12 game audition right now, obviously still looking to get those reps in and, prove that he can be a contributor to this team. I feel for him. 100%, not worried at all in terms of his stats for playoffs. He's probably going to come back or be ready to come back right at the end of the regular season, given that it's only going to be a month-long injury. And, a month from now is right when the season ends. So not worried at all about that. Obviously, Griffin, my feelings, and I'm biased given that we interviewed this guy, Amari Williams. So I'd love for him to be able to get some reps here towards the end of the season. But I think just with the margins so small in between playoff spots and there being 20 games to go, I think this is the time of the year where you just got to go with the guys you trust. And sure, there are probably going to be situations where Amari Williams will be better for the game planning or a better fit based on the schemes you're rolling out than a Luka Garza. But Luka Garza has been that, as you talked about, Ian, that like pick and plug guy who's come in at various points throughout the year and proven that he can give the Celtics valuable minutes. So am I opposed to rolling out Amari there? No. It just feels like this typical thing where we'll see a lot of Amari probably in the last 3 to 5 games in the season when playoff positioning is wrapped up for the most part. But I think they're going to roll with Luka as the guy to back up Kata, just going with the trust factor.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're more so going to go with Luka Garza. And with Amari Williams, he gets that contract. You see that. I think the contract was the right idea because, you get him up here more opportunities, because again, this is a big man which they could grow with next year. And you look at Amari Williams and you look at and Ian, you'll be the unbiased because David and I are very biased with Amari Williams if you can't tell. But I have to say, you looked at it as soon as they signed him to that contract, they sent him back down to the G League to give him reps because I looked at the whole situation. Once you traded for Vucevic, it kind of knocked Amari Williams out of the rotation. But I think there's still opportunities for him to get time in there. I feel like, now that Vucevic is down, you could kind of give him more of that time because, that's how you develop. You see guys like Hugo Gonzalez, Luka Garza, who they've integrated into the lineup and kind of developed this year, and even Baylor Shireman and Ron Harper Jr. You've seen how far they've come. I think they should give Amari a little bit of time as well. I'm not saying a bunch of minutes, but like every now and then. I don't mind that. But Ian, what are your thoughts on the whole Amari Williams?
Yeah, so I can say I am a fan of Amari Williams. He showed in a few games this season that there is a real NBA player in there. He's still incredibly raw as a prospect, I think. So I think that's just gonna have to happen. But I do agree with you. I think by the end of the season, some guys are going to be rested. There's going to be games against teams down the stretch where the Celtics might already have their playoff position wrapped up, and you're going to see guys from the G League probably play in the last 1 or 2 games of the season, kind of every season, just to give the starters a break and stuff like that. So I think there's going to be definitely opportunity for Amari Williams moving forward. I don't necessarily think it's going to be in a legitimate role or anything right now, just due to the fact that the Celtics are still kind of jockeying for position and they still have a slight chance at being the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of opportunities against the teams like OKC or Minnesota, like those kind of big primetime games. But if you're playing a team, I don't know, for example, like the Washington Wizards on Sunday, you might see maybe Tatum is out for that game or Kate is out for that game or somebody, needs a rest or something and Amari finds minutes somewhere. So it's one of those things where like, I definitely agree with you. I think there's a chance that he could play some spot minutes here and there, but I don't think he's going to be like, he's not going to play like a ton of minutes right now, at least. Like, I think the last like 1 or 2 games of the season, you might even see him start a couple games, like at the end of the season just to like rest all the starters. But like other than that, I think that's kind of like where we are with Amari right now. But I do think he has a bright future with Boston, just the fact that he was able to get a standard contract in the first place.
My bet, you guys can take my bet right now, against the Washington Wizards. I see him dropping 84, I got to say. If Bam
Adebayo can drop 83, then, what do you who else can drop 84 or something like
gotta say. David, do you have anything else on this though?
No. Yeah, I think Amari's time will come. I just don't think it'll be this year. But I mean, the Celtics are one of the best organizations in the NBA at developing prospects. And I mean, we've seen that we've had multiple contributors come up from Maine to these championship teams, such as Caires, not so much in the championship run, but now Caires is obviously a huge part of what we're doing. Hauser was developed down there. So I think Amari's time will come, but we're probably looking at next season.
I do want to give you something, though. I mean, you were talking about the development. I mean, all of the Celtics' most recent centers of at least the last half decade have all somewhat developed with the main Celtics at one point or another. I think you can go back to like Robert Williams back when he was with the Celtics and he didn't get a whole lot of minutes his first couple seasons. And then he was able to develop into, the guy that was almost a defensive player of the year candidate type player. Luke Cornett was in the G League with the Celtics for at least a couple seasons. Neemias Queta was in the G League for like a couple seasons. So like the Celtics have a plan when it comes to developing big men, and they know what they're looking for in a guy. So the fact that Amari Williams, and he's had some huge games in the G League too, which is also really good to see, at least from like what I've seen as far as perspective. Obviously, you guys cover the main Celtics a little more than I kind of can watch it, but I've seen him have some really big games, and like I said before, like there is a legitimate NBA player in there. It's just going to, it's going to come with time.
Jeez, you got me fired up now, Ian. You gave me some motivation.
I'm not gonna say he's Robert Williams or anything right now. Just don't think that, but like give it time. There's a chance
that spend time down in Maine too. We can't forget about Taco in Maine.
Oh, see, there you go. See, there's a chance. There's a chance.
Gotta love it. But talking about Maine, we're switching over to the Maine report. I gotta say really quick, a fun little thing I saw on Instagram is how do you say it? What's the Magic's G League team? I don't want to butcher. It's Ossiot. No, I don't even want to butcher it. It's a town in like right outside of Orlando.
Osceola.
Yeah, I think that's how you.
That sounds right.
Yeah. I don't want to butcher it. I remember seeing Mac McClung play for that team last year. That was a fun game. We got to get – I have someone from the Maine Celtics who's the ball boy. He was telling me a story about what happened last year. You'll have to stay tuned for that. But I saw some funny pictures, some cool team bonding pictures, which when we go back to the Maine Celtics, we'll have to ask them about this. But they went fishing. So let's pull up some of those. You got John Tonji right here, caught some fish. They were really out there in Florida. Hassan Ward, 2-year player with them now, caught a fish as well. You guys remember this name maybe? Aaron Scott from Summer League also out there caught a fish. And the one I thought was pretty interesting right here was Keon Johnson, who I that might be his own boat, because I remember I went to go see if he had any other pictures on there, but he must have taken them off. But I saw that Keon Johnson is a fisher as well. He likes fishing, so that's interesting to see in there as well. But some good team bonding. But one thing I do want to talk about, and I'll actually switch it over to David, if you wanted to just talk about how the Maine Celtics have been playing as of recently, really quick, if you wanted to dive into that really quick, David.
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of hot and cold here for Maine. And their 3 games in March, they won against the Windy City Bulls to kick off the month on the 1st. Then on March 8th, they got blown out by the Magic by 31. And then just yesterday, they were able to get their get back against the Magic and win by 7 down in Florida. They're sitting at 14-16 right now in the season, and they're on the outside looking in for the Eastern Conference playoffs here. They're in 10th, 14-16. Noblesville Boom is right ahead of them at 14-15. And it's Capital City Go-Go who have the last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference currently.
So, how many games do they have to win out of the? Do they have to win out now, or maybe?
I mean, I think it depends on
the
what
other
happens
teams
with the
do
other
that.
teams.
Yeah.
I can say we have 6 games left in the season, or 6 more games left in the season.
Yeah, so gotta really watch it. All right, so we'll keep eye on that. Ian, I gotta say you're going Friday. That'll be fun. Moses Brown facing off against them, right? Is he still? Because I remember I went to the game against the Gold, and Moses Brown was on there. I wonder if he's still on there. That'll be a fun one to watch. Are you excited for the game coming up?
I am excited. I think it'll be a good time. I always like going up to Maine Celtics games. Obviously, living in Massachusetts, it's not as easy, but like when I get the chance, I definitely try to go up there because it's a really great atmosphere. And but yeah, I'm very excited to see what's been going on. And I saw John Tonje had a really big game last night. Amari Williams has had some big games recently. I'm a huge fan of Keon Johnson. Like I've always kind of been a fan of his when I saw him in Brooklyn. So when they signed him, I was pretty excited. And so, I think there's a lot to be excited about, and I'm ready to see what you guys are hyping up about the Maine Celtics here.
It's been a fun season. It's been rough because they've been battling with some injuries out there, but it's been fun. And speaking of that, you mentioned it, Ian. John Tonji's 42 points last night. This is a guy who we signed to a 10-day contract, and this is a guy that you guys need to take a flyer on because he's been producing ever since he's been with the Maine Celtics. And I think this is a guy where you look at it, if you can even get him on a 2A next year, maybe see more of what he can do. But I am a big fan of John Tonji. But do you guys have anything else you want to talk about the 42 points? I know you just mentioned it, Ian. So, David, do you have anything?
No, I mean, it just shows the potential that a guy like John Tonji can have. Talk about Ron Harper Jr. in a second as well, but yeah. I just want to echo this quote that I didn't hear it last night when I was watching highlights of Ron Harper Jr.'s game right before this podcast on YouTube. This quote from Drew Carter is so true, where Brad Stevens is just in a lab duplicating these 3-and-D wings that come up from Maine. And it's just so true with Ron Harper, Sam Hauser, potentially John Tonji. I mean, I don't know. I think that's really good roster building. You can never have a surplus, in my opinion, of versatile wings that can hit the 3 and play defense. So keep them coming until I die as a Celtics fan.
I can't say one thing about Tonji that I was really impressed about. He would normally come out first with the warm-ups that I saw. He's a lot more athletic than I thought when I first saw him. He can dunk on guys pretty easily. I was kind of surprised. I did not know he kind of had as much athleticism as he did, just kind of based on his build. When you see normally you don't really kind of expect that thing, but he's really talented, and this athleticism is it's going to be very interesting because I feel even if the Celtics don't take a flyer on him, somebody will, and I think somebody will eventually he will eventually find a spot somewhere in the NBA in my mind because I feel his athleticism really does play.
That's a good take. That'll be one to look back on once John Tonji is a member in this NBA, because I think he's super talented. I think this is a guy to really keep your eyes on. For sure, for sure. But you mentioned it, David, in there too. Ron Harper Jr. 22 points last night. Ian, I want to ask you initially because, and David, you too, because I don't know if you were on last week's episode. No, I don't think you were, about when we were talking if Ron Harper Jr. gets a contract with this team. Do you see a contract by the end of the season? I still believe in it, especially after last night's performance. I don't see a world that we don't sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal. But Ian, do you see Ron Harper Jr. getting one, especially after last night?
I don't know. I mean, like, he's definitely shown a lot more than like a guy like Drew Peterson, for example. Like, I remember when Drew Peterson had like a couple games last year where he looked good. I think Ron Harper has shown a lot more than that. I think the only reason why he wouldn't get a contract would be cap constraints for Boston, because they normally keep the 15th roster spot open, just as cap circumvention. So like, if he doesn't get a contract, I think that's going to be the reason why. But that's not always been the case. They signed Neemias Queta to their 15th man in the 2024 season when they were very much over the cap. So it's just one of those things. I think it's all going to depend on cap circumvention when it comes to Ron Harper Jr. getting a standard contract. But with the way he's been playing, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he did end up getting one by the end of the season. But just if it doesn't happen, I think the only reason why it wouldn't would be because of the cap constraints.
Yeah. What do you got, David?
I think it's going to be happening, honestly. I've been doing a lot of research on this. Shout out to Google Gemini as well, along with Twitter, for helping me understand this, where there's a theory going on right now that the Celtics are going to wait. And I personally believe this to be true. The Celtics are going to wait until the final day of the regular season to sign Ron Harper Jr. to a standard contract. They're going to do that for a couple reasons. One, to make sure he's eligible for playoffs. I mean, I don't know, with rotations being tightened as much as they are in playoffs, if he's going to be able to contribute. But the second and more important reason is what you were talking about a little bit there, Ian. It's just the situation with the salary cap. Now, had we given him a standard contract in the middle of the season, like right around when Amari Williams got his standard contract, it's prorated, as far as I understand from all this research I'm doing. But his cap hit, if we sign him on the final day of the season, which is the last day we can do it for him to playoff eligible, would be potentially as low as like $50,000-$55,000. And there's a little bit of manipulation going on here, obviously, with the Celtics. 600,000 according to this, under this luxury tax. So I personally think this is going to be a formality. They're just waiting it out strategically. But I do think Ron Harper Jr. is going to be getting a standard contract and filling up that 15 spot. I just think it's going to come like very, very close to, if not the final day of the regular season. So I just think it's a lot of just waiting at the salary cap. That's what the holdup is.
I hope. Ian, do you have anything else you want to say?
For Ron Harper Jr. lover as well, who's watching these videos, I hope they'll stay with that.
No, shout out to him for sure. But yeah, I think it's definitely cool to see him like kind of turn his NBA career around, because what was it last season that was he not on a team last year? Or like there was something to where like he didn't play for like a very long period of time or something. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I felt like there was like a time where like he wasn't playing for somebody, and like, but he was a bucket in the Raptors G League. I remember when they first signed him, I'm like, wait a minute, that's a name I recognize. And, he's been in the Rising Stars games a couple of times. So like, I think I've seen him through that as well. And, he was always a very interesting prospect in my mind, but the fact that he's been able to put it together, and like, I think that Rising Stars game kind of like put everybody onto him a little more. Just giving him more of a platform and kind of seeing his personality and stuff. And like, he's kind of just like a really good guy who's just kind of grinding it out here. And he's become, a solid contributor to the Celtics, where like, in the beginning of the season, who would have thought that he would end up becoming this kind of legitimate guy for Boston? So I think, like you said, it should come in time. And like worst case scenario, maybe he signs another 2-way with the Celtics in the offseason, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and we just talked to Spencer Martin, the main Celtics broadcaster, so go check it out after this. He talked about, last year even Ron Harper Jr. was battling with some injuries. So, he played with the main Celtics last year, then got that 2-way with the Pistons, and I hope it happens. I really do. But now going into the road ahead really quick, our predictions, this one is going to be after the OKC game. So we already predicted that on the last podcast. So we had 3 games. The Wizards at Celtics on Saturday, and then Suns at Celtics on Monday, and then Warriors at Celtics on Wednesday. What do you guys have the Celtics being after this stretch? Ian, we'll start off with you.
I'm going to say 3-0. I think this should be a 3-0. Last time I checked, I don't think Devin Booker is. Oh wait, no, he is back for the Suns. Okay, maybe it'll be a closer game than I was thinking. But at the same time, I still think even with Booker coming back, I think the Celtics still have a chance to go 3-0. They should beat the Washington Wizards. It would be something if they didn't. That game on Monday against the Suns should also be that should be a very good game. They played a really tough game, but that was also a game where Jaylen Brown didn't play in the first time against Phoenix when they were in Phoenix. So the fact that Tatum and Brown should be playing, that should also be, pretty big. And the Warriors game, that's going to be a game I think that they're going to want to win just because Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis are coming back to TD Garden. And I don't know if both are going to play. Maybe I think Horford will play. I don't know if Porzingis will play, but either way, it should be a 3-0, this road ahead for me in my mind. So that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go 3-0 here.
What do you got, David?
I mean, I want to say 3-0, but I'm just going to hedge my bets, hopefully, and say 2-1. We're going to lose to the Wizards. Just kidding. Hopefully, I didn't just jinx us and make a crazy clip, but I think we'll beat the Wizards. Just makes me a little bit nervous always. I don't want to use the word trap game, but going up against 2 teams that are kind of playing recklessly right now and wanting to desperately secure their positions at the bottom of the playoff picture in their conference, that just makes me nervous going up against 2 teams like that. I do think we'll beat the Suns. It just always feels like we're never destined, ever since they beat us in the finals, to sweep the Warriors in the season series. I think the Warriors are always due to get at least one from us every season. Last year it was similar, where we beat them in their home court, and then they took one from us at home. So I think the Warriors, unfortunately, are going to beat us, as much as it pains me every time losing to the Warriors in these last 4 years, more specifically. But could I see a role where we go 3-0? Absolutely. Obviously, I'd prefer that. But I think we're going to go 2-1 in this upcoming 3-game home stand.
Yeah, I think if you do lose one, you lose to the Warriors, but I'm going to go 3-0 too. I think this is one where if the Pistons continue to lose some games, this is where you want to kind of get them, and I think these are 3 games that you should win. So I'm going 3-0, but I gotta say, I was gonna do this at the beginning. David told me to. I gotta say, 91, Blake Griffin, episode 91. My name's Griffin, so I had to get the Blake Griffin jersey on.
You don't even need a custom jersey.
I love it. Any final thoughts, though, before we close out, Ian or David? Any final thoughts on the Celtics or anything else you can say?
Not much. This is, I think you said this is coming out after the OKC game, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how that game goes. If Boston does win, that will definitely be a story. That'll definitely be a big thing, because I think both Caruso and Holmgren are trying to come back for that game, so that'll be a big one. If Boston does win that, that'll be huge. But overall, just want to see him continue working back. Jayson Tatum, seeing his progression, seeing this team continue to gel towards the playoff push. That's really all I can really talk about. Just excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. What about you, David? Any final thoughts?
Same thing I've said all season. Just don't let things snowball. Obviously, a tough win against Spurs last night, but a game that plenty of people probably thought we weren't going to win anyways. Just don't let it snowball here. It's going to be tough against OKC tomorrow night, but yeah, just let's take advantage of these games that we should against teams that we should be beating.
No, well said. Everyone go check out Ian. Ian, thank you for joining us once again. But with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time we upload. We appreciate you guys as always, and we will see you guys with the next one. Peace, you guys.